Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Dude here, and today we're back with a brand new setup video. This time we're going to be doing a setup for the BMW Z4 GT3 car. Now this car is extremely stable and easy to drive. I know I've said that about a few different tunes and you guys may have not agreed with me, but this car, at least fully upgraded, is probably one of the best handling cars in the game. Definitely good on tracks with really low speed corners, tight corners like the first sector of Maggiore GP or Nürburgring GP. It does really thrive in those low speed corners and has immaculate traction as well as very adequate straight line speed given the rest of the category. I wouldn't say it's going to be the strongest car in Group 3 fully upgraded, but it's definitely more than viable and more than usable. I think at some tracks it can definitely contend with the best cars in the category. Now before we get into the setup, I just want to let you guys know that 79% of the people who watch these videos are currently not subscribed. So if you can make yourself one of those brand new subscribers, I would greatly appreciate it. Leaving a like and a comment also helps me out a lot. Leave some feedback on the setup, maybe a car you would like to see in future videos. I don't know, but I really do appreciate the support regardless. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the setup. So here we are in the BMW Z4 setup. As you can see, this really does compare a lot to some of the other FR GR3 cars that I've done. One thing of note is I'm actually running the acceleration sensitivity a little bit higher than I normally would. That's because this car does have a lot of traction, and I do feel like the balance at 37 on the Accel Sense is actually pretty strong. Now I've also experimented with running some rear ride height in this car to help it rotate because it's just so stable by default. I feel like the straight line speed deficit you have when you raise the rear ride height is just not worth it in this particular game. So you could obviously experiment with that if you would like, maybe if you feel it's a little bit understeery. But I personally like to run it exactly like this. Now for the transmission, of course, I'm actually running a little bit shorter gears as far as first and second as what I normally would on some other cars. Because this car has such good traction, you don't really have to hide from the power band in first gear, especially after the update. There's so much traction with these cars. So I do find I can run a little bit more of a conventional transmission that doesn't have as long of a first and second gear. One thing to note, of course, is if you are running with the balance of performance enabled, or you are running with less than 788 horsepower, you're going to want to move the final gear of this particular transmission to the right. See at the bottom it says 2.950. You may want to move that up to anywhere between 3.1 and 3.5, maybe even more. It obviously just depends on the track you're racing at as well as the power level that you're racing at. Generally, you want to be at the top of 6th gear on the longest straight of whatever track you're racing at, and that's usually a good way to gauge what your final gear should be. But yeah, these ratios, they should work really well, and I hope you guys enjoy this setup. We're going to be testing again at Trial Mount today. This may not be the strongest track for this particular car, but I have a hunch that it's going to turn some heads and surprise me. Also, a little fun fact with this car, with this exact setup, it just falls barely under 800 pp. So if you're racing it, you could race it fully upgraded in an 800 pp lobby, just barely get it in. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the lap. So here we are at Trial Mountain Circuit in the BMW Z4 GT3. Now this car is extremely strong on pretty much any track, but I would say it does have a little bit of an acceleration deficit to some of the other FRs I've driven. But here we are, going through the S's. Definitely got to slow it down quite a bit more than something like the RCZ in our last video, but you can definitely still fly through these S's. Hard on the brakes. Get into second gear. A lot of brake pressure there to get the car turned in, but it's definitely carrying the speed quite well. Again, infinite amount of traction coming out of there. Get right down on that curb. Again, it almost feels like an infinite amount of traction in second gear. Get the car tucked in nicely, get back to the outside as much as possible. Get the car turned in, a little bit missing the apex there, but the important part is to get a good exit for this tunnel, and we definitely did that. Now we're going to carry all of that additional speed down the straightaway here. You want to rev this car just a little bit, rev it out a bit here into 6th gear. 190 hard on the brakes. Get the car turned in, right on the inside wall as much as you can. Use the traction on the way out because it almost has a mid-engine feeling traction through there. Follow-up section, little lift, hard on the brakes. A little bit of understeer, get the car tucked in on the curb. Back onto the throttle as soon as possible. Once again, use all the available track here on the inside. A little slide there actually on the entry, but pick up the throttle. Lots of traction. Hard on the brakes, try to brake in a straight line here, get the car turned in. As much on the curb as you can, try to set up this final corner. Car rotates nicely at low speed on turn-in. I feel like the low speed behavior of this car is absolutely fantastic. We're coming to the line here in a 141.876. Now that is an impressive lap for this car. Again, I don't think I've had a car that only goes 190 miles per hour on this track be able to run a lap time like that. So that's extremely, extremely impressive for the Z4. And once again, tracks I would highlight are maybe Nürburgring GP, Maggiore, some things with the maybe lower speed acceleration zones, even something as silly as Streets of Willow. I can see this car being really, really good at. This car, this setup, definitely one of my personal favorites. It was one of my personal favorites in the previous game, and I think in this game it's definitely a viable option. Also, if you're doing tire wear races, it actually is pretty damn light as well. With the balance of performance enabled, that changes things a little bit, but overall the setup will definitely work for BOP as well, giving you shorten the transmission. If you do have any feedback on this particular setup, guys, let me know in the comment section below, and I could always recommend some changes for you guys to make it kind of just handled more to your liking and your driving style. So before we close out this video, guys, if you can click the like and the subscribe button, as well as leave a comment on what car you would like to see me tune next. I will try to get to it as soon as possible, but leaving those comments definitely increases the chances of me getting to our favorite car. But that's about it for me, guys. I really do hope you have a fantastic night. It's been Dude, and I'm out. Peace.